Welcome to the HR Community Podcast. My name is Shane O'Neill, founder of Civitas Talent, the HR and HSE recruitment community. Each episode we will host HR leaders and discuss their journey and discover best practice HR solutions across the HR industry. Whether you're a CEO, HR executive, or operating across the wider HR space, this podcast is for you. Please like and subscribe, and don't forget to comment and share your views. Enjoy the episode. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the HR Community Podcast. This morning, I'm excited to let you all know that I'm with Natalie Britt from Zip Co. Nat is the Director of People and Culture for Zip Co here in Australia and New Zealand. Welcome, Nat.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about you, Nat, and your role. I mean, it's not a very new role. You've been there for a couple of months now, but I'm sure you can tell us a little bit more about the role. And I think a lot of our listeners, including myself, know exactly who Zip Co are, and some of us may even use it as a customer. So you can tell us maybe a little bit about what Zip Co do as a business as well. That'd be great.
Yeah. So look, I have just started like 3 months ago, first fintech role. So, really challenging opportunity for me, not being in this space, and worked in a number of different industries. But, for me, joining Zip, they're very unique. And, their culture and what they do for our customers in Australia and New Zealand really separate, themselves from the buy now, pay later industry in general. And I say that because, there is this element of care and financial well-being that we really pride ourselves on. And really it is a service to help people out in this very challenging market where everything costs more than probably what it should. And it gives people options to still purchase, to still be active in the market and have a sustainable way of, managing their costs day to day. So, really great, innovative product. And, the people that work at Zip are such innovators. They're extremely creative in what they do to try and enhance the user experience and making sure that our merchants and our customers are really happy with our platform, because we are a tech-based company and we need to be on the forefront of any sort of innovation regarding technology and making things easier for the customer and also internally for our people. So really great company, very proud of the brand, proud of the people that work for us. And we call our people Zipsters. We have a very unique way of inducting, onboarding, and also attracting and retaining our Zipsters. So yeah, looking forward to sharing more about that.
Awesome. Fantastic. And obviously, like you say, great from a customer perspective, because with the inflation and the price of stuff nowadays, but also great for businesses as well, especially local and smaller businesses, because they can continue to sell their products with the Zip sort of process, which is pretty cool. And we will get back into that in a minute. But I was very keen to, learn a bit more or maybe share a bit more with our listeners in terms of your journey in HR, Natalie, because you've worked in various different industries, various different locations, operated in various different sizes of companies, and very keen to hear a little bit more about your journey and why you got into HR and sort of worked from there.
Yeah, and look, I get asked this question so much, right? Because my journey is not your typical sort of pathway into HR. So I studied a Bachelor of Business and Commerce, and when I first moved into university, I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I picked a very general, broad sort of degree just to sort of get a taste of what I was passionate about and what my strengths were. So look, realised pretty quickly accounting was not one of my strengths. So, doing accounting, doing marketing, doing economics, stats. And then I stumbled on the HR subject. So I did recruitment and selection, I did negotiation, bargaining, advocacy, and I really liked that element. More so actually the industrial relations component. So I worked out pretty quickly. I had a strength in that area and really took a liking to understand our employment framework and what constitutes, policies, legislation that really has an impact on how we do business and the impact it has on people. So I majored in HR and industrial relations, and then pretty much went straight into the HR industry as soon as I left university. So I started in transport and logistics. So my very first role as a HR administrator or coordinator back in the day was at DHL and then Star Trek Express. And, I think for me, what was unique to what a typical HR practitioner would do when they jump out of uni is, move into that white collar, get themselves immersed with the basics of HR. But because I moved into transport and logistics, it was all about industrial relations. It was all about unions, bargaining, negotiation, very complex grievances. So I had to learn really quickly how to bargain with unions, how to deal with legislative changes and high-level grievances. So it was pretty much the hard style of HR when I first started, and then I moved into the soft skills around L&D and leadership development. So for me, I have moved around very deliberately in my career. And that is because I wanted to get a taste of different industries and work with different leaders across a broad range of organisations. For me, I think I fast-tracked my career because I took deliberate risks. I didn't stay in an organisation for 10 years. And every time I moved organisations, I moved up. So, I started very much as a HR coordinator, then to a HR advisor, and then really quickly wanted to work in the leadership space in HR and start to develop other HR practitioners. So, I think that with the diversity of industry and the roles that I've undertaken, there's been a lot of contract roles in there that have allowed me to get into an organisation, create really fast impact, deal with change and transformation and achieve results. And so for me, I haven't been scared to move around. I think that's probably been a benefit and a strength to where I am at the moment. And I'm still doing that. For me, headhunted in a couple of roles, but how I landed in Zip, it was a process of going through 9 interviews to get here and making sure that it was the right cultural fit. So, yeah.
Amazing. That's fantastic. What a journey. And just sort of looping back on a couple of things. So first of all, you mentioned the industrial side, and I'm sure you and I can agree that in the sort of modern HR job family, I would say the industrial relations side is probably not the sexier one for the aspiring HR BPs to get into these days. What was it about the industrial side that really attracted you? And I guess what would be your sell to other BPs that are, thinking about moving into that space?
Yeah, I think, any HR professional that wants to be a generalist, so wants to have a generalist role or become a, HR director or a leader of a HR team, you need to have that understanding and level of experience, because you're going to come across a grievance at some stage in your career, and it may be a complex grievance that you need to go to Fair Work and you need to be able to mediate on behalf of the organisation or deal with the commission, and how you provide responses to forms that you're required to fill out in relation to that. It's really important that you have that experience and that grassroots. You may not love it as much as I love it, but I think the love for me came from really having a great understanding of the legislation and how to conduct a fair and reasonable process for both parties, right? So, it's been really true to process. It's knowing the legislation that dictates our industry, and then being able to really have that integrity and credibility with leaders in the business that look to you for that advice. There is never a role that I have been in where I haven't been able to utilize that skill. And I might not be operating in the industrial relations space, or there might be a whole ER department, but they still come to me to ask me the question, can you provide me a script? Can you, look at the legislation and see if we're in breach, or have we followed the right process? So for me, and then the other part is the EBA negotiation. So if you're fortunate to get experience where you work in an organisation where they're negotiating their enterprise bargaining agreements, or they're in a greenfields agreement where you're developing that from scratch, I can't tell you enough how great that experience has been for me, because you really are able to draw that knowledge when you're looking at award interpretation, or you're setting up a new business and you've got to set up the parameters to support the entitlements and provisions. So I can't tell you a time where I haven't had to draw on that skill set as a generalist, but also as a leader. You're going to lead teams that are going to get complex problems that come their way. You need to be able to coach, mentor, and demonstrate that you're able to help them through that and have that. So you can't fake that as well. Like, you've got to know it. You've got to do the time. You've got to do the research, and then you've got to have years in practice of actually, dealing with employment lawyers, dealing with the unions, dealing with the commission from time to time. So I would say that, I've learnt to love it even more along the way, because I realised how much I utilise that skill set at that higher level.
Fantastic. And I'd agree with you there as well. And I think even for some of our listeners who are more in the generalist or aspiring sort of BP space, from a recruitment perspective, some companies are a bit more open on industry backgrounds at the moment and what kind of organizations you've worked in at that level. But as you're probably well aware, as you move up the ranks and as you start to move into the more senior and executive side of HR, you really need to have strong experience across all breadths of HR, because essentially you're going to lead the strategy and advisory on a lot of that. So did you find as you started to move into more the senior roles, Nat, that CEOs or CPOs and the like would really sort of probe you more on the full breadth, the IOR, the ER, as well as all the other streams of HR?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? So, and I take Serco Defence, right? I was HR director for Defence there for 3 years, and I had a really strong MD and a really great executive team, and they would always draw on me for that level of expertise, right? Particularly around EBA negotiations or even transformation, right? And I think that's becoming more prevalent now, where CEOs and executives are looking to you to run a really seamless restructuring program or change management program. And for me, it's less about now dealing with the grievances because, I've got a team to manage that, but I can still coach and mentor them. It's more about understanding the risk and highlighting that risk. So, just the last couple of weeks, I've been dealing with risk and governance and compliance and highlighting those risks and being able to rate those risks appropriately for things like transformation and change management initiatives. So, it never sort of goes away. There's always got to be that person in your team that has that level of ability to deal with those top level issues that you need to sometimes report to the board, right? The level of complexity and the risk associated with a decision that has an employment impact. So I think for me, I sort of never want to let go of that dealing with grievances, because even as a CEO, they still have grievances, right, at the exec level. And so you will still get a CEO coming to you to say, hey, can you write me a script or can you help me with this? And I'm happy to do that because I think it still keeps me ahead of the game. I'm looking at changes to legislation. I'm making sure that I've got progressive policies and procedures. I'm reviewing the code of conduct constantly. So, it's something that I think any senior HR practitioner should have in their skill set.
100%. And sort of going back to the contracting element, I'm a big advocate for contracting. I've recruited contracting for many, many years. And I do get approached by candidates sometimes who've never really tried and tested it. And obviously, if you're in a permanent role and you've got overheads and you've got, stuff outside the world of work that you need a permanent job for, I get it. So there is that risk element of moving into a contract role. But what would you say would be some of certainly the pros versus the cons of getting into contract and interim work, Nat?
Yeah, so top of mind, one of the biggest benefits for me is I have built so many connections, connections in the HR industry, but also executive connections. When you work with different organizations and you have that diversity in terms of industry, you're able to pull from so many people and be inspired with very different leaders, right? Rather than be in one lane for 10 years and deal with the same leaders and the same HR team. So, my connections are across a broad range of industries. And so I'm able to, loop into forums and conferences and really share that diversity of thought and being able to have people that you can still call on. Like I still call on previous MDs that I've worked with in the past. I still call on previous HR practitioners that I've worked in the past. So, being able to diversify and have that big pool of network in your HR industry, but also in the business industry is super important. And you can't do that if you stay in one organization for a long period of time, right? Because that is all you know. The second one is not being afraid of change, right? Because change is a constant. And I think that regardless if you work in an organization long term or you're moving around, you need to be able to be agile and flexible and adaptable to change. And by being in contract roles, it almost forces you to be comfortable with change because you're constantly, looking at your next opportunity and you're not sort of being comfortable. You're always uncomfortable. And I think for me, it's finding the comfortability of being uncomfortable, of not knowing where you're going to be 12 months down the track and having the confidence and trust in your ability to, take that next challenge. I mean, I'll take my last couple of roles, I had an interim period where I was working for TEG for a couple of months consulting. Now, what I got in that 3 months of working there was just fantastic. I built a great network of executives. I got to understand that industry, and understand the challenges of the live entertainment industry and coming back from COVID. So, just having that really inside look into different businesses from a contracting perspective is definitely a benefit. And I would also say it fast tracks your career, because when you're in contract roles, there's not time to immerse yourself into the business. You have to literally get in, do a job, and you build credibility through the work that you produce at a faster rate, right? So for me, the reason I've got the skill set I've got, I truly believe, is because contracts almost force you to speed up that learning process, right? And so, I would say anyone, gone are the days where organizations are wanting to keep people for 10 years, right? And employees don't want that either. So I think, it's a benefit for anyone to take contracting work. And then the only other benefit I will add to that is some of the roles I've taken have allowed me to work in different countries because of that contract opportunity. So, Etihad Airways was a parental leave contract. I saw the world through that, through that 12-month contract period, and I got to work in great cultural, different countries that taught me what I wouldn't have learned if I didn't take that role over a full-time role here.
So cool. And last season on the podcast, we talked a lot, or the trend a lot was around war for talent. And earlier in the year, there was a lot of talk about hybrid working. But I think hybrid working is pretty much essential now. And then in terms of the war for talent, I know we're still early days in 2023, but there seems to be an interesting dynamic happening in the market right now, or at least across the world with the global economy. So, I mean, where do you see, or where would you predict that the market, particularly from a HR perspective, leaning this side of the year, Natalie? And that'd sort of be the first question. And then the second question to lead off that is, I guess, where's going to be most of demand in HR right now? Because I know you and I have talked before about experience and well-being and all these areas that just seem to be more and more demand. So, what are your thoughts on all that?
Yeah. So look, I think from a war for talent perspective, right, there was a lot of hype around that at COVID, where everyone was saying, there's not enough competition there's not enough people in the market. And I think for me, it's around your EVP piece, right, internally and externally, and making sure that you have, a really strong brand in the market, and you're able to position what good looks like in your organization. And, if it is the heart of your people, being able to explicitly talk about the unique values and leadership principles that you have, to really attract and retain top talent, right? Because gone are the days where people think salary is the only reason people join organizations, right? You join for that purpose piece and, what is the company's mission beyond company performance, right? And so for me, it's about the initiatives that give that additional piece of satisfaction to an employee. And that is around the wellbeing and the CSR, the community, and, the responsibility of our people to have sustainability. And what does that look like? So initiatives like that are super important. And I think, I don't want to undersell the importance of mental health and employers really taking a proactive approach to managing well-being holistically, but also the mental health implications. So, when you're looking at war for talent, those top talent individuals out there in the market are looking for that value add piece. Yes, you have to have a competitive remuneration strategy. Yes, you have to have attractive benefits, but you need to have more around the purpose and job satisfaction. And, do you have career development opportunities to want to retain those top talent individuals? So, I would say that, yes, there is still a war for talent, and every industry, every organization is facing challenges to try and find that top talent. But when you find it, you've got to make sure that you keep it long enough. And when I say keep it long enough, anything 2 to 3 years is quite good, right? So being able to really demonstrate your EVP, strong branding positioning, having great value add initiatives in the organization, and making it about the people and leadership and the values behind your leaders and the pathways for those individuals. I would say from a HR perspective, if you're looking at changing, organizations in the HR land, you've got to be able to have change management experience, because a lot of the organizations now are looking for how to create internal optimization and efficiency in the business. And so if you're unable to influence or elicit a discussion around org redesign, or how do you create efficiencies around creating simplification of processes and structures, then you are going to struggle, because organizations want to find cost efficiencies across their structures. And then the other part is being able to be progressive in your initiatives, right? So what are some of the leadership development programs that you are looking to innovate and looking to, elevate in your organization? If you don't have that capability from a leadership development perspective, then you are going to struggle. So I think that having strong leadership development experience, having change management experience, but also just being able to influence, innovative HR programs and having experience. The other one is data and reporting. So I would say that HR practitioners need to be able to have experience in data insights and reporting, because businesses are making decisions based on those HR dashboards. And so if you have any experience in working in HRS systems, so, do you have experience in integrating new systems, integrating new technology that can provide that data and insights, I would be absolutely trying to get exposure in that space.
Yeah, which is so cool as well from a HR perspective, because when you sort of look back traditionally of what the scope of the role was, even, 10, 15, 20 years ago in HR, as you say, now it's really about leadership and change. And even the system side of things is quite interesting as well. And I had a conversation with someone the other day, and we were talking a little bit about recruitment, and they're in marketing recruitment, and they said, hey, when I did this job 20 years ago, and half of these roles didn't exist. So it'll be amazing to see what kind of roles pop up in the future. And I'm seeing it in HR now. There's so much demand for HR systems, reporting, professionals. And some of them do come from the more technical roles, from the IT side. But there's a lot of HR generalists out going, hey, I enjoy HR generalists responsibilities, but I want more exposure to the systems and the change and the projects and the transformation, which is really cool.
Yeah, and look, the only other one I would say is, I've had a leadership title for a long time now, but when people ask me, why do I do what I do continually, I'm still a business partner at heart. And I say that because my best days still in organizations are working with and in the business, rather than sitting outside as a separate function. Being able to integrate and understand the commercial and operational challenges and building solid relationships with your business leaders is always going to be key, no matter what level you're at in your HR career. And, the business development aspect is also a really key piece. If you are involved in mergers or acquisitions and you're going out and bidding for new work and having to sell your HR, platform and function, having that exposure and being able to really have a commercial brain, as opposed to just a technical HR skill set, I think goes a long way.
100%. And then you touched a little bit on, just a little bit earlier with when we talked about the market and the demand for talent, etc. So one thing that I've started to speak to some of our C-suite about, especially CEOs or CPOs or those that are hiring, is the fact that it's actually okay to be transparent with candidates now. Like, what's the end goal here? And a really great CEO that I did some work with recently said, I tell all my new HR directors, it's okay if I get the best out of you for 2 years, because by then our business is probably going to move in a different direction where, we might need someone else, or, you might want something else. So I think it's okay now to have this conversation. And then even if you're a company that, I know Zip Co have been around, I think 10 years now. So they would have gone through different cycles and scales and growth over those years. But when I guess you look at some organizations that are going through that similar journey, it's okay to think short term and think, hey, let's get someone in for the next 12 months or 6 months, or hey, let's be very transparent with these people that we just want to get it from year 1 to year 2, and then year 2 to year 5, and then after that we'll sort of see where we go from there. But I think you're right. I think that whole traditional we'll hire you and we'll keep you forever mindset is definitely gone in a lot of organizations, but also in a lot of candidates as well, because we want to be tested. We want to be challenged. We want to move and shake and get ourselves out of our comfort zone as well.
Yeah. And, it's so refreshing if I touch on Zip and what I've seen over the last 3 months. It's so nice to see an organisation not have a 10-year strategy. Like I've been in organisations where they've gone, we've got a 10 and we've got a 12, got a 15-year strategy. And you go, there is so much that can change in that 15 years, right? So when Zip looks at their strategy, they're always looking at reviewing it constantly year on year. They have plan on the pages that they work to around, what are the top 5 things that you can commit to in the next 6 months? And let's smash them as opposed to having, 50 odd things that you need to do over the course of X amount of years, right? And the other one is when we have a strategy, it's the next 3 years, right? It's not the next decade because, 3 years is even, ambitious and things can change in 3 years. So being able to work in an organisation that has that mindset and that, there is constant change and you need to be comfortable with that. And there is going to be ambiguity and that's okay. And some things aren't going to be amazing, but that's part of the journey, right? So I think it's really great to see an organisation be at the forefront of that and the realisation. And then you touched on another point around being open and transparent. I think vulnerability and being open is such a key skill that I guess leaders and organizations underestimate, because being vulnerable, being open and transparent about current state, about what's not working, what is working is so key. And sharing personal stories and becoming intimate with people that you work with is super important. So just picking up on that point.
I love that. Yeah, 100%. And vulnerability is by no means a weakness whatsoever. It's a great way of, I guess, just having that reality check. Okay, these are my gaps. This is where I need support. So this is where you can come on board and support me. And I think having that transparent with someone, particularly in our space, in that senior HR space, so at least you can put your action plan in place. You know what to expect. You know what challenges are ahead, so you can start to pivot and move and support the business through it. I was going to say something else, Nat. I guess in terms of your journey in HR, and you touched on a couple of great points, especially for some of our more aspiring leaders, like giving different industries a crack, ensuring that you're across the wider employee life cycle, taking contracting, an opportunity to learn and travel, et cetera, et cetera. I guess what would be your sort of 3 key tips of advice for current or even aspiring HR leaders out there who are listening to your story?
Yeah. Look, first one is don't be afraid to take risks and then realize that the risks you've taken may not be the right decision for you, right? I think it's all part of the learning process. So one of the things I think you owe yourself, the time is be comfortable with not making the right decision in your career. And that's okay, because that's also part of the learning. So you might work for an organization that you just feel like you don't fit with, right? And you took on the opportunity because you thought that it would be the right opportunity, but no one really ever knows if it's the right role until you're in it and you're embedding yourself in it. So my call out is okay to make mistakes in your career, because that's part of the learning of where you need to be. And so take a contract role. And if you don't feel that it's right for you, it's okay to jump out. Organizations will understand. And it's about being honest and transparent about that, to go, hey, I got it wrong. I thought this organization would be great. I got some experience and these are the learnings I took out of it, but I know now what I'm looking for. I know what's important to me, what the values I want to be demonstrating and seeing in an organization. So that's tip 1, right? Take risks. If they don't work out, it's okay. People make mistakes and there is always some good out of that can come from it. I think the second one is, never take your finger off the pulse around learning the changes to our landscape in HR. And that is, how you learn is your choice. And there are so many options of how you can learn. You can go and do some further study. You can go and do some short courses. But for me, it is having a really strong network out in the HR industry and, put yourself out there, go to the conferences, listen to podcasts, being able to connect with other HR colleagues across different organizations is super important, because there's always changes, whether it's about hybrid working or work from anywhere policies or, what is the latest and greatest around, D&I and inclusion and what could we be doing better. Being able to have those networks to draw on is super important for you to be progressive and you to be modern in your HR approach in organizations. So that's number 2. And then number 3 is keep evolving and keep learning, right? And when I say that, keep learning from different leaders in the business and be inspired by the right leaders. You can also be inspired by the wrong leaders, because you can know what doesn't look good and what you can learn from that. But I would just say have a continuous learning mindset and be challenging yourself outside your normal comfort zone. So, for example, I took on a course to become a reformer Pilates teacher, right? Has nothing to do with HR, but, it teaches me how to have a balance and to be able to have other things outside the HR world that I've been living in for such a long time now and focus my passions on a much broader sort of approach rather than just one lane, one thing I'm going to be focusing on. So I would say when you're learning and you're thinking about stretch yourself beyond HR. That's your competitive edge.
Awesome. And literally stretch yourself, because obviously yoga, very relative.
Yes, absolutely.
Couple of quick questions for you, Edith. I know you've got a hectic morning ahead now, so I won't keep you too much longer. Most influential person in your life?
Oh my God. That is such a hard question because I have so many people. I have to say, look, there's two, right? I cannot.
Most influential people.
Oh my God, the most influential people. I think my mum and dad, right? And I say that because I really owe a lot to them through how I've become successful in my career. And that is because my parents at a very young age taught me the value in working hard and taking risks. They're business owners themselves. And, just watching them struggle, make the wrong decisions, then make the right decisions, but always teaching us that no matter what came our way, there would be struggle, there would be challenge, but you never give up and you have strength and courage to take the risks to better yourself. My parents are literally, I think, a big contributor and the reason why, me, my sister and my brother are successful. So they're massively influential in my life.
Amazing. And now I'm going to reverse the question. Who do you inspire, Nat?
God, who do I inspire? I would like to think I inspire people. I think the HR professionals that I lead. So, along the way, I have developed really great friendships with people that have reported to me, that have worked alongside me. And I think, when I ask them, why do you want to keep working for me? Like, are you honestly a sucker for punishment? Because, I'm a tough manager at times. They say, because you're inspirational, Nat. And I ask them the question, why? And they say, because you take risks and you are not afraid to be your authentic self. And so I would say, I hope I inspire and influence the people that have worked alongside me and with me. And I think, my siblings, like we're really, really close and we push each other and we have so much drive and passion and we're constantly each other's biggest fans. And I think that's super important.
And just off the back of that, I'm sure that you've inspired a lot of listeners as well with your journey across HR. Some great advice there. Any upcoming retreat or ideal holiday?
Oh my God, holidays. Oh, what is that? I don't even know.
Yeah, right.
Oh my God. Look, I think for me, so my background is Italian. My dad's Italian and he lived in Venice till he was 21 years of age. And I still to this day have not gone to Italy. So I think next trip is going to Europe at the end of this year.
Amazing. Yeah, definitely advocate for Italy. I was there for the first time last year. So we went down the coast to the Amalfi Coast and Positano, and yeah, it's definitely in that sort of top 5 destinations on my list anyway. But look, thanks so much for joining us, Nan, and thanks for everyone for tuning in and hearing a little bit more about some of the demands in HR, some of the trends in HR, and I'll catch you all on the next episode. But thank you again, Nat.
That's right. Awesome. Thank you. See you. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the HR Community Podcast. Remember to like and subscribe and share your views and comments below. This podcast was brought to you by Civitas Talent, the HR and HSC recruitment community. Whether you're a candidate looking for a new role or organization looking to secure brand new talent for your team, please get in touch with us today. Thank you.